This session here is fantastic. I'm super excited about this. This is the Ask the OpenShift Experts section, as you can see there. And what I've got a load of my esteemed colleagues here from the various business units, product groups across Red Hat to come and join me on stage here. And we're going to use this as an open mic session, meaning that if you've got any questions regarding any product within the Red Hat portfolio, particularly OpenShift, obviously this is OpenShift Commons, would love to hear from you. Again, like I mentioned at the opening keynote this morning, it's about that two-way dialogue and communication. It's about us. We've had some sessions telling you about what we're doing, what we're thinking, but we'd love to hear from you as well. So at this point, I'd love to bring the Red Hatters up onto stage there. There's a fair few folks, but again, it's reflective of the various product groups we've got. So hopefully there's not a weight loading on this stage, because otherwise we're going through it. So fantastic. Okay, so to kick things off, do we have anyone with a question at all?
I see a lot of experts out there, actually. Maybe we should ask them the questions.
So this is where we have the awkward silence. But I'll tell you what, I'll kick things off, right? Obviously, we've got a load of big themes we've been covering today. Artificial intelligence, virtualization, GitOps, oh gosh, what else? Security as always, networking, app dev, yeah, God, just everything. So I'll tell you what, let's kick things off with one of the bigger topics that we've been discussing today around artificial intelligence. So I'll tell you what, look at my friend here, Eric. Eric's heavily involved with things light speed related. Like you may be aware at the moment, we have Ansible Lightspeed for the playbook generation. In tech preview at the moment, we have OpenShift Lightspeed. Like I mentioned this morning, this is a fantastic tool for both experienced and inexperienced OpenShift administrators, and really helps with that onboarding of new vAdmins onto the OpenShift platform paving the way to learning a new platform. So at this point, Eric, do you want to give us, what's new in Lightspeed, what's happening, and
Well, yeah, so as you mentioned, Lightspeed, OpenShift Lightspeed has been in tech preview for a while now, and there's sort of two interesting things that are happening. So internally, we have a number of other product groups that are looking at deploying and building their own virtual assistants. So we've made some announcements. I think, did we talk about the RHEL? I think we may have announced the RHEL one, something maybe with RHEL and some other things. And so we're trying to figure out how we can all sort of share common code and build sort of common feature sets and other things. So that's some interesting sort of sausage factory things that are happening. And then specifically on the OpenShift side, we're looking to pivot towards what are we going to do to enable customers to bring their own knowledge into the virtual assistant. So not just, hey, how do I do this thing, but how do I do this thing at my company? How do we do it here? And making sure that those types of answers are prioritized over sort of generic base knowledge, right? So those are some of the interesting things that are happening.
No, fantastic. Thanks, Eric. Whilst we're on the topic of AI, anyone else want to talk about trends that we're seeing? Well, obviously AI is the trend, right? But actually, we've got a gentleman at the mic there. Yeah. So across to you, sir.
I want to ask what their thoughts about how AI models should be stored and used in an OpenShift environment.
All right, so I can take this one. So we've been working in Kubernetes on a feature called as OCI volume sources, and we believe that we have a lot of intelligence in the Kubernetes side, in the kubelet and the container runtime, to store and access container images from container registries. So we have auth, we have signatures that we can validate to make sure it's the right content. And with OCI volume source, what you can do is you can store your model in an OCI volume, store it on a registry, and then use it as a volume source in your pod YAML. So you can say, okay, give me quay.io granite and mount it at /model, and then your VLLM knows that it has to pick it up from that location. So this feature went alpha and will be pushing for beta soon.
No, fantastic. Someone down there?
Yeah, there's just a little bit I want to add to that too. With the operationalization of AI sort of context, I think that storing the model is useful, and having the ability to leverage the cosign ecosystem for signatures and non-repudiation is really useful. I think the key to some of the product direction that we're taking, you can see it in OpenShift AI with our release of the model registry and our future plans for the model registry, are the capacity to take those kinds of artifacts that allow me to be very sure of what models I'm deploying and couple them with knowledge of how I built them inside of an MLOps platform. So key to what I've seen in customers in these kinds of environments is not just how do I store the model, how do I access the model, but how do I understand what model I'm deploying and what data that model came from. So the coupling of those two things, I think, is kind of the future that we're seeing for the direction in AI in the space.
Fantastic, thank you. Good answers, thank you. And a good question. Next question, please.
Yeah, so Sailesh Sankaran, I'm from Procter & Gamble. So we are working on a POC with the Red Hat OpenShift in the AI space. So just a quick one on the, like I'm trying to convince somebody, why should I use Red Hat OpenShift AI versus like NVIDIA providing out-of-the-box AI enterprise and other solutions? What is the two quick reasons?
Yeah, two reasons. All right. So number one is that NVIDIA is clearly the market leader in accelerators, and they're a strong partner of Red Hat's. I think that betting the entire farm on the NVIDIA stack uniformly is not the most, sort of, we're not future-proofing against what the market's going to do in the future. So that vertical NVIDIA stack induces additional risk, traditional hybrid value prop applied to the GPU space. And then I'll add that NVIDIA is really focused on helping you do the best that you can with their GPUs, and we want to make sure that you're able to do that inside of our platform in OpenShift AI and use those NVIDIA GPUs the best you can, but also at the same time bring capability that isn't directly related to that GPU. Some of the more enterprise-ilities, Red Hat's been your trusted software provider for a very long time, and we're happy to continue to do so in the AI space. So the platform around that AI use case, I think, is an important part to, I'm going to use the word I used earlier, operationalization, which is, there's a lot of Z's in there, but making sure that you can get...
It's an additional SKU
Yes.
which we have to buy, right? Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I get the NVIDIA AI enterprise as part of the GPU I'm buying.
In some of the
so
SKUs
it's kind
that you
of
purchase
baked
them, that
into
is
the
correct.
cost, right? So
Yeah,
there's always
absolutely.
a pushback. Why do you buy again another SKU?
So you're saying that, I want to clarify, your point is that if you're buying GPUs that include the NVIDIA AI Enterprise SKU, and if you're doing it in a world where you already have account of the OS and you already have the Kubernetes layer covered,
yes.
Because if you buy the GPU as opposed to like a base pod, then those aren't automatically there out of the box. NVIDIA AI doesn't cover those. So I'm telling you, we have the complete picture for the production sort of infrastructure, and we're not saying NVIDIA is not the right way to do that right now. I'm happy to work with all of our partners on that stuff. So I have more than GPUs and the software to run on them. I have a complete application platform.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Fantastic, no, thank you. And one thing I neglected to mention up front, actually, for those of you asking questions, we've got some swag down the front here as well as a little deal sweetener for any of you that want to ask questions. I think that may be a follow-up to this question. I think this gentleman here, unless it was related to the AI one. Yeah, is it related to AI? Sorry, okay, we're good.
Hi, hello. What would be your recommendation as a strategy for migrating from VMware to OpenShift? And do you have any consideration or, I don't know, maybe a process to leverage the migration from the storage point of view?
Yeah, really good question. I mean, that's the second big topic we've been asked a lot of questions on today around virtualization. I've got the gentleman there, Peter Lauterbach, as part of the product management.
I just want to clarify, this was just workloads in general, has nothing to do with AI?
Yeah, we have clusters operating several virtual machines in several applications, VNFs. Now we want to migrate them to containerized applications in OpenShift.
Okay. Yeah, so there's a couple of things here. And by the way, we've heard this question more than once this year. We want to make sure that the ecosystem that you use works well with the ecosystem that OpenShift uses, especially for virtualization. So you shouldn't have to change your storage vendor. We don't believe you should have to change your backup vendor, right? Any automation that you're using should be compatible with it. But if you want to use Ansible, that's cool too. Okay. So we've worked very hard with the ecosystem, and you'll see announcements from partners. In fact, NetApp did an announcement this morning. I think Veritas went GA earlier this month. You're going to see this area is rapidly evolving. As far as the migrate, you had also asked about sort of how do I migrate? Was there a question in there about
Any
that?
recommendation, maybe what is the approach? Do you have a preferred tool? Or how we start the process? You know?
Yeah, there's actually a couple of things to this. One is we actually do have tooling, right? The migration toolkit for virtualization, which interestingly enough, migrates VMs off of VMware, OpenStack, and Rev. But you can also use other techniques, right? So things that have been around for a while, like database replication, that's a good way to actually non-disruptively move your data over to another platform. You don't actually have to stop the VM. And then there's actually a whole bunch of applications that folks, usually container-based ones, that folks run in VMs like Elastic, Splunk, Mongo, Cassandra. There's a whole list of them. The application is already built into the application cluster.
Yes.
So that one's actually super easy. You just create new cluster members on an OpenShift platform in VMs, and you just start migrating data automatically. The beautiful part there is it's super easy to do, but also the application, like Elastic or Splunk or whatever, stays up the entire time. It's totally non-disruptive.
Okay, thank you. Thank you
So,
very much.
so just around MTV as well, just to clarify, that comes included with all licenses of OpenShift as well. What we see a lot of customers use as well, if they've got thousands or in some instances tens of thousands of VMs they want to migrate at scale, we're seeing them leverage AAP or Ansible to allow them to do that. And obviously it has the benefit around day two operations of those virtual machines once they're on the platform as well. So. Yeah. So anything more anyone wants to add on around that one?
Just to add to it, we see a lot of customers start with like the story of the migration. Hey, let's move all of those VMs as is from VMware to the OpenShift virtualizations. But just back to what Peter mentioned, they quickly realize a lot of these apps they don't need to run in the VMs anymore, right? And there's a huge saving of resources, and then the whole life cycle changes of it gets simplified, right? So you'll be surprised how many customers that we work with, they start with just a simple, hey, let's use MTV to move all of these things over, but then they realize all these operators for the stuff they're using, they're already there in OpenShift, and they can just start adapting those.
Yeah, it really comes down to familiarization and comfort levels. Like initially we see a lot of customers, their immediate requirement is moving their virtual machines off of their existing platform onto a new platform. That's just top of mind, so that's high priority, and it's time sensitive quite often as well. That's step one, but what we are finding increasingly, those customers that have performed that or maybe partway through the migration, it's like getting anything new, right? As you get more familiar with it, your teams start to familiarize themselves with it. They start to want to see, okay, what else can it do? How can I stretch this new platform that we're now using as well? And at that point, that's where they start to look to the sort of containerization or modernization capabilities that, that you can apply to these newly migrated VMs as well, things like service mesh and the likes you can apply to these VMs, but also, the containerization aspect as well. So it's definitely a journey, but it accommodates those customers that, just want a virtualization platform. Tech, we've got that covered, but also it provides that element of future-proofing and more strategic, forward-looking protection as well from the investment. So, yeah, thanks very much. Next question.
Okay, I'm Gabriele Bartolini. I'm a Postgres contributor, and I work for EDB. So my questions are on Postgres. So the first one, if you see a lot of demand for running Postgres inside OpenShift. The second one is, what do you think about our approach to dedicate nodes for Postgres? I say, treating cattle versus pets versus elephants. That's our approach, to separate logical scheduling from physical deployment. So what's your opinion about this isolating Postgres nodes for Postgres workloads and even using local storage for better performance and more predictable performance? What's your opinion? Is it an anti-pattern, or is it something that you would like to explore with us as well?
No, very, very good question. I think
I have
someone at the end there
yeah.
who maybe has to answer that.
I have a wealth of opinions to share. I think that's a pretty solid approach, especially in particular for databases. Resource contention is really a bad killer of performance and can start causing major issues. And I see this a lot, not just in databases, but in other applications that have their own idea of how to handle replication, sharding, and things like that. And when an application has that context, I think that it's fine to do, and in some ways you do still get to gain the benefits of containerization, in particular with OpenShift, where we have RHEL Core OS, machine config pool updates, using pod disruption budgets to help with those
Exactly.
migrations.
Yeah.
I think that approach gives you a lot of the benefits without some of the benefits of being able to densely pack pods per node. But for really critical workloads, like certain database workloads, I think it definitely makes sense to consider that approach in order to be able to ensure that the database is going to work like you want it, and you know that you've already got replication and sharding covered at the application layer. So sort of a complex answer, but I think it totally makes sense if that's helpful.
Yeah, Postgres is an advanced replication system, with synchronous replication at transaction level. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're able to use the Kube API to scaffold in the appropriate arguments and configurations, things like that. I think it's an approach that makes sense. It's a reasonable compromise.
Okay, but are you seeing a lot of demand of Postgres inside Kubernetes?
Yeah, I think we all
OpenShift,
nodded when you said that. Tons of people are wanting Postgres and Kubernetes. I think Postgres has become the de facto default database for basically any implementation, and Kubernetes has become the de facto default infrastructure orchestrator. So yes, everywhere.
To add to the opinion that you presented, I think a lot of it is context dependent. So it's not a situation where like you're wrong or I'm right or whatever. It's more like what is the performance envelope that I need to sit within with respect to the database workload? And in some cases, dedicating a whole node to one or two Postgres instances is probably the right choice. For other use cases where it's like, we've got 100 internal WordPress blogs, like I couldn't care where the Postgres instances run because they're serving 10 requests a day kind of thing. So it's certainly not there's not any hard and fast rules other than know what you need it to be able to do and let that inform kind of the deployment scenario. So as long as your solution is flexible in the way that it allows users to deploy it, then you sort of get to check all the boxes.
And that could also relate to migrating from VMs.
Yep.
So you've got Postgres on VMs outside, and now you have a good way to move inside OpenShift without even VM, directly on OpenShift. And OpenShift have the scheduling, and so you save also on licenses from that point of view, okay? Anyway, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
No, very good question. Thank you.
I'd like to speak with you afterwards.
So don't run away.
Everyone would like to speak.
Alrighty, next person, yes sir.
My question, it can be from OpenShift or OpenShift AI, right? If I want to try out this new experimentation or whatever we can call like RAG or graph rags, those type of experimentation, is OpenShift already have any playground where we can directly go with the AI and try those things out, or is it too early to?
Is your question about a public playground where you can try those technologies, or specifically?
Ideally, a public playground to begin with, so that we can draw parallels to see what we need to do if we want to bring. Sometimes what happens is if instead of reading some blogs, if we run ourselves, we will get more idea what might be happening in the back, like in the public scenario, that we need to carry on to bring it to disconnected environment, right? So there are many things that are going on at a very super fast pace. So is there any place where we can try out these things, especially RAG with graphs, right? So that's one of the concepts that we want to try out.
Sure. So somebody from the OpenShift AI team will have to correct me, but OpenShift AI is not in Sandbox right now, is it? Yeah, so we do have a public playground, but that we call the OpenShift Developer Sandbox. Gives you kind of 30-day windowed access to various OpenShift features, but we don't have OpenShift AI there today. And wait, there's a hand in the back. It is in Dev Sandbox?
You don't have GPUs though, right?
No. Okay.
Is there enough resources to spin up a small notebook? Because I don't think so.
Maybe. So the best answer I can give you is in the room right now, we don't know the extent of the availability of the public sandbox with respect to the features, but the resources that you're offered are pretty minimal, and it's very easy for things like RAG workloads to get very performance sensitive and resource hungry very quickly. And then the other challenge is GPU availability. So we're not giving out GPUs in that environment, and to try and serve a language model that's doing RAG and also do the embeddings that you need to do it, like there's just not going to be enough in sort of the freebie, if you will. The next best solution is probably something like one of our cloud services, like Rosa or Arrow, where you can get in at a relatively low cost to just kind of kick the tires. without having to invest for the long haul or do a whole major transaction with Red Hat to get what you need. And then of course, if you already have OpenShift in any capacity, we can do evaluations for a time period to let you kick the tires in your own infrastructure. So we've got some ways, but unfortunately, there's not just an easy like, hey, click this Red Hat RAG button in the cloud because I want to kick the tires.
Okay. So whatever you mentioned, the other alternative, right? Even if we have to spend few things, is there a validated solution where if we want to go and see how things are implemented so that we get an idea?
So
it's again experimental playground?
Yeah, and Jeff, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but the one thing that Red Hat's not shipping today directly is a vector database solution. So we've got various partners and examples, unfortunately, like you mentioned before, with blogs and whatnot, but whoever your appropriate solutions architect is, as part of your Red Hat account team can definitely help, kick the tires on something like a simple RAG virtual assistant type interface.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
No, very good question.
I'll just add a quick one for you there. So there is exploration in vector database space. We also have strong partnerships, the ones that he mentioned. So strong partnerships with various Postgres providers, including PG vector support, strong partnerships with Elastic, strong partnerships with Redis. We have opinions, including open source implementations of vector databases from everything from like Milvus to Prisma and everything else that everyone else is messing with. So if you wanted to understand a little bit about what it looks like, getting a GPU in an environment to tinker with, I think there's a mix between, I think Rosa is one of the answers that you called out, Rosa Arrow, any of those kinds of answers. It's a great place to go where you can, if you're not in like the normal corporate account, if you're in like a side account that doesn't have all the restrictions, the capacity to spin stuff up on the fly. And then I think we have a lot of patterns available between the OpenShift AI documentation as well as the AI on OpenShift.io site, as well as, of course, your solutions architects, like you mentioned. We have a lot of examples of that kind of stuff available.
Yeah, one thing I should clarify there, we get very used to using acronyms, as does the whole industry, right? But yeah, so Rosa and Arrow are our cloud services offering on Microsoft and AWS out there. I think there might have been a question, thank you very much, firstly, and there might have been a question right down the back there. Fantastic.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of our system integrator partners have labs that they can let you access for periods of time, whether that's the big hardware vendors like Dell or some of the other partners that are out there.
Fantastic. Great question. Thank you. Yes, next question, please.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Andre, CTO at a fintech, and I'm here to learn a bit about OpenShift. In my company, we are running a rather large set of workloads that are function as a service, like AWS Lambdas. And so that worked well for a while, and it has grown, and now I'm looking for like the next best thing. It could be this OpenShift. And I'd be interested in a migration options. Is there anything that is known, available to me that could help me in this migration? Because I need to sort of have something in between those functions and make it compatible with the workloads that you manage.
So when you say function as a service, are you using like AWS Lambda or something?
Lambdas,
yeah. Who's our serverless expert up here?
I know something like OpenWhisk, those kind of things have been.
I can add a little bit to that, I suppose. I'm not a service expert. But
no, but we don't have. Yeah. I don't know that we have migration tooling.
Yeah, so Knative. So OpenShift Serverless is a framework that allows you to take an incoming request and instantiate a pod in OpenShift, react to the request, and then you can scale back down to 0. You can elastically scale them within limits. And so one of the nice things is if you have a fixed or limited pool of hardware, in other words, if you're in a cloud and you have like some elastic scaling, but you have like limits to how many instances you'd be able to scale up to, those kinds of things, then you can use different policies with OpenShift Serverless to support that kind of workflow. I'll add that with Lambda in particular, you usually don't provide a container image or anything, you just provide like some code. So I'd add some more OpenShift capabilities. On the simple end, we have S2I, which is source to image. OpenShift can be pointed to your code repository, if it's just Python code or Go code or Java code or things like that, and package a container image for you that's pretty opinionated on security standpoints and things like that. Gives you a little bit of flexibility to modify. And then if you need to graduate above and beyond that, that building full-blown containers using any of the other tech that we're talking about today, like we're talking about the trusted application platform, or something a little bit simpler like OpenShift pipelines, will give you the ability to get a container image with that application code in it. The catch is that some of your Lambda functions may be calling AWS services within AWS, and you have your STS caller identity, and so some of that will need to be unwound in this environment. And then you can run all of that collection of things inside of a managed OpenShift service with pay-as-you-go pricing. So it gives you kind of parity for pricing, but also if you make an investment in a longer-term contract for some hardware or VM instances on a cloud provider, and it's portable across those implementations. So OpenShift serverless, it's based on the Knative project upstream, I think is sort of the meat of how to get after that.
I think within the last year or two, Knative added some Lambda-like capability to just, here's my jar, here's my Python, like not, you can still do the source to image, but I think they actually have slightly easier ways.
I haven't done that.
Yeah, no, I think that came out a year or two ago. And then the other comment about like accessing the AWS resources, certainly if the OpenShift environment is on premise, but that environment is connected to the internet, you can still access AWS resources. So there's the amount or extent of code change that would have to happen to the function to call those native AWS functions depends more on the security posture that you adopt when you adopt OpenShift in terms of connectivity to the rest of the universe, as opposed to any specific shortcoming of Knative itself.
I think the question is mostly how to go from event-based to container-based workload.
So I don't think there's actually, this sounds dismissive, that's not a question you need to ask because the serverless capabilities of effectively do the same thing. You can still be event-based and invoke these functions and make these calls with an OpenShift environment just like you could in AWS Lambda. Like it's I hate to use the term functionally in the context. It's equivalently, it works the same way. So I'm calling this API, which under the covers is making some code run. How that happens in an OpenShift environment smells a little different than how it works in Amazon, but ultimately under the covers, it's very similar.
Okay.
Wait, are you guys saying that you can run serverless workloads, virtual machines, AI RAG model training? Wait, are you saying that all that stuff can run on OpenShift? And it can run anywhere, trusted, comprehensive, and consistent? Are you actually saying that? Oh my God, that's so cool.
No, these are great questions. Probably got enough time just for one more question, if that's okay. But these are great questions, so I do appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, so for someone who has a team with deep Kubernetes knowledge, and we have an in-house platform which runs a lot of similar technologies, KubeVirt, Trivy, Olama, stuff like that, what would be the benefits for my team transitioning to OpenShift?
Oh, you.
You're basically taking on the role of like building your own distribution internally, right? And so, we offer our distribution. We call it OpenShift. I probably go through a lot of the pains that you go through, in the sense that, skills come and go, people come and go from your teams, support windows come and change. Someone goes and decides they want to put a new bell and whistle on your cluster that you didn't know about or think about, and suddenly you're like, is there a CVD there I'm responsible for? Is there a remediation there that I'm responsible for? You go upstream and you're like, that patch isn't there. It's not actually being supported in the community at the cadence that I was using. So a lot of what I would say you should attract you to OpenShift is just knowing there's a lot of smart people working on your behalf to make sure that those problems are solved for you so you can focus on your application. And I think that's a lot of the toil that I feel like we do at Red Hat here, which is like, we talked about this morning, Kubernetes, just at the base, kubelet API server, controller. There were a lot of DIY users out in the world who could cobble something together, maybe throw Flannel as a CNI at the time, right? But the set of use cases, and I don't know your company, are quite large and diverse, and personally, I would be hard-pressed to think about, depending on how big your team is, how you're best supporting your organization with either what is possible or what risk you're carrying in your team for when the bad happens. So, but I would say, like, with a product like OpenShift, you're getting access to the best curated set of community code in the cloud-native environment. And knowing that if you wanted to go and play around with Tecton, you wanted to go play around with Knative, you wanted to go play around with virtualization, you have a partner here who is committed to supporting you on a long life cycle with all the security updates you need, so that ideally when a bad thing happens, you have a CVE rollout, that type of thing. It's a one-click update, like versus a panic at your organization to go rebuild, redeploy, that type of thing. That's to me like 99% of the things I would think through. So it's very possible your organization is doing amazing today, but like one superstar away from finding a new thing to go work on or a new shiny toy to attract. And I would just ask, like, hey, how do you backfill that expertise? Like, that's a lot of the stuff that Red Hat's trying to help you out with. So I don't know if other folks have perspectives on that, but I don't know. Otherwise, it would come down, like, what are your pains you're feeling today? And maybe there's a particular pain point, like, oh, man, OpenShift fixed this for you. But
I mean, you kind of nailed it on the head, just having that dedicated team for us, reducing the man hours for us whenever something breaks. It's a lot of digging through the community and digging through Stack Overflow issues, stuff like that,
so
versus
like
having a dedicated team like you guys solving it for us.
One of the things that's like, I am certain at Red Hat we run way more CI gating, release gating processes for the distribution as a whole to make sure that when we do an upgrade of a new version or a given Z stream or on a given nightly, that we know that all the things work well together. And there's a significant investment even here on Red Hat where we didn't talk about, which is just around insights, right? Where you can say, why is this thing not working when that version was there? And often you'll get a notification from Red Hat saying, hey, you might have an issue you didn't even know about, right? So it's actually public. You can go and see the number of CI tests and the number of builds on every nightly version on all the platforms that we're exercising. And this guy right here is always upset about what it costs, but
it's worth every penny.
I have total confidence that Red Hat is doing far more than what you'd be getting on the upstream with respect to just qualifying a modern day matrix of assembled packages that you compose into a modern day distro, which is.
I would add one more thing too. We are not only packaging that stuff up, but we're representing you as a force strength multiplier in the communities to help navigate. I don't know how many times I've talked to different folks that are doing a DIY thing, and they've made some choices of what they're putting together in their cluster, and I'm like, you want to stay away from that upstream. They just hid the Helm chart, then you're not going to find it again. Or like, it's kind of moving in a different direction. Like we're staying tuned into that. Like that's our core competency, is staying tuned into that to make sure not only are you guided towards the right best of breed stuff in an opinionated way, but also let's say that upstream dies. Like we had a major change in storage, right? Like we used to be our ODF, OCS, CNS, whatever we were calling it at the time, was Gluster based. And we made a big pivot to Ceph and ODF, and we were helping customers through there with longer life cycles, giving them the new thing, this is where you want to be kind of thing. Like us carrying and shepherding you through those transition moments as the platform continues to evolve is a big part of it, because otherwise you're sitting there going, I don't know. In the logging stack, there was a lot of big changes recently with Loki and how that was done between like Loki 2 and 3. That's a hairy upgrade doing it yourself. But for us, it was you click the button and it moves your stuff. All the new knobs you have to do in the YAML or the Helm, all filled in for you, all handled by our operators. And it's part of what our platform does. That's our commitment. So.
Awesome, thank you.
We're actually at the end of the session, but I think, gentlemen, yeah, please, real quick.
For the support aspect of Red Hat, I'm on the support side. We give you life cycle, like you mentioned, right? We give you 3 years of support. Try to get 3 years of support from many of the cloud vendors. We do certifications on all of our hardware. All of the cloud vendors, we certify every single one of those. Our operators are certified. So you could use a third-party piece of software on vanilla Kubernetes, but what work are they doing to guarantee it's going to work on whatever platform you use? That's what we do, all of us. On top of that, if you run into a problem, let's say you have a cryo problem, Peter Hunt is the maintainer. He's sitting right outside. So as a support engineer, I open up a Jira issue, it goes directly to Peter, Peter works on it, and we fix it. What happens if you have a kubelet problem or container D or something else? Who are you going to? You're going to go to the community. A lot of what goes into OpenShift is done by Red Hat employees. You open up a support case, get 24/7, follow the sun, and we go right to these individuals or the other individuals, and we help fix your problem.
Thank you all, I appreciate it. And thank you to the panel here as well for the great conversation. I just want to do just a very quick plug, if possible, for the Ask OpenShift admin every Wednesday at 11. So yeah, you can check that out on Twitch, but also YouTube stream as well. So if you're not familiar with that, there's a barcode in the corner. Definitely check that out.